Before we start, we advise viewers to consider carefully. The following content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Day 28 of the trial. A white envelope was handed over right before the afternoon break. No press was notified. The initials JLL were printed in bold along the tab. Inside was Jennifer Lopez's affidavit, 6 pages long, 2 pieces of evidence, with no legal team present in court. The submitted record was marked as a voluntary statement of relinquishing ties. The judge allowed this under a protective motion, citing the relevance of historical patterns to Cassie's investigation. No names were redacted. Her statement began without a greeting or introduction. Just one line: "I was never invited upstairs. I was asked to build the staircase." It all started in the summer of 2005. I had just wrapped filming a movie and launched a fragrance line. The business was booming, but I craved something smaller, something more meaningful. That's why I started this movement, an intensive summer dance program for minority girls in Los Angeles. No branding, no partnerships, no men in the room. I funded it out of my own pocket, rented a studio through a third party, and personally auditioned the girls from an open casting call. No agents, no managers, just pure energy. The focus wasn't on performance, but on presence. I wanted them to feel the difference. By the second week, everything was going just as I had hoped. Sweaty, emotional, focused. I showed up 3 times a week. No glam squad, no entourage, just me and the music. And then the attention started to come. My creative director came to me after a meeting and said, "There's a record label that wants to sponsor this program. Big money, big press." I didn't even ask who it was. No, I said yes immediately. I didn't need their check. I didn't want to look them in the eye. But the next day, a package showed up at my house. No name, no return label. Inside was a printed proposal, clearly the company's content. At the top it read, "Sponsorship proposal for the Diddy movement," and at the bottom was a full wardrobe from Sean John Press. The location had a vibey feel, but it wasn't those details that bothered me. It was the talent development, the long-term mentoring opportunities, the ability to observe all the intensive training and performances. I read that line 3 times, then a 4th time. They didn't want to cooperate. They wanted closeness. They didn't want to help the girls. They wanted to watch them. It sounded like support, but it was more like surveillance. So I did what I knew I had to do. I said no, not a maybe, not a later, just no. And that's when the silence around me started to change. I built this movement into a sanctuary, not a PR stunt, not a content machine, but a place where the girls could train, sweat, and be seen as the people they wanted to be, not what the world wanted them to be. We had 25 dancers in the program that summer. Most of them came from public schools, community centers, and second chance programs. Some had never even been to a professional studio before, and they were amazing. These girls didn't move like they were being watched. They moved like they were finally allowed to. No stylists, no filters, phones tucked away. As soon as they walked in, it became sacred. But I should have known. It couldn't last forever. By the 3rd week, the whispers started, but not from inside the room. They were coming from outside. My assistant was the first to notice. A car parked across the street. Same model, same time, 3 days in a row. Then a random stylist, someone I'd never worked with, showed up claiming they were sent by a friend to provide outfits for the girls' final showcase. When we told her there was no schedule, she just smiled and said, "Oh, he told me there might be a change." I didn't like how she said he. Then a scout, clearly from the record label, tried to sneak in through the back during a break, telling the studio manager he was there to scout future talent. We shut it down. No visitors, no observers, no outside access. If you weren't there on day 1, you weren't getting in, period. But the strangest thing was the girls started showing up on casting lists. One of them, a 17-year-old girl from Phoenix, landed a spot on the casting list for an ad campaign that she hadn't even auditioned for. Another was approached by someone outside the studio who said he had seen her dance before, even though she had only performed at my camp. That's when I realized it. They had been watching. They didn't need a formal invitation. They didn't even need cameras. They just needed access. Any access. And I was the doorway. That's what I couldn't unsee. That's what I couldn't forget. This time, an official offer came in, polished on letterhead. It was from Combs Enterprises. I remember holding it. So, I did the only thing I could do. I locked it down. A few days after I started turning people away, this time, an official offer came in, polished on letterhead. It was from Combs Enterprises. I remember holding the package and thinking, they really think I'm going to agree now. The salutation was formal. Dear Miss Ori Lopez and the leadership team of the movement. How sweet. There was no team, just me and the girls. The first two paragraphs were all praise, a revolutionary step towards revitalizing mentorship for young women, an inspiring platform we believe deserved to have its vision and resources expanded. Then came the deal. Full funding, outfits designed by Sean John, media coverage with enthusiasm and flair, a mentor to connect with the girls. And this line was in the middle of paragraph 3. We believe this platform can identify early-stage talent suited for long-term mentorship within the Combs network. That was the line that changed everything. I read it 3 times. Then, I called my lawyer and asked him to read it. He immediately pointed out 3 clauses that I hadn't even caught. No requirement for participants to consent to the offer. Observation presence does not need to be disclosed to participants. Staff under Combs can attend workshops at the discretion of the funding entity. I said, sorry, that's not a proposal, that's a pipeline. And they wanted me to pave the way. They weren't offering to support these girls. They were asking me to help select, label, and deliver. That's when I realized I wasn't invited to collaborate. I was being offered a disguise. Their presence was supposed to come with empowerment. Their access was hidden in my credibility. I didn't read the rest. It wasn't necessary. I called it by its right name. Predatory professionalism. I said no, this time even louder. That afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. We think you're talking about legacy. I didn't respond. That night, something slid under my front door. Plain white paper, 1 line, typed, courier font. Every door you lock means someone else will open it first. No name, no signature. I kept that paper, folded it once, tucked it in the back of my locker, and never opened it again. 4 days after I turned down the official funding offer from Combs Enterprises, I received a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. He's not my manager. He's not on the payroll. Technically, he's not even on my team, but he's still around here. People in that industry don't belong to anyone but seem to float between the cracks. Not on the guest list, but, you know, those people in that industry don't belong to anyone but seem to float between the cracks. Not on the guest list, but always present in the room. That's him. He used to do ADR, responsible for talent development for a record label that no longer exists, at least not publicly. The call was very brief. He didn't bother with small talk. He said, hey, forget the letter. It's optics. At that point, the camp wouldn't need funding anymore. Access is needed. Let him see. That's when I felt it. I was in so much pain because now I knew exactly who he was. Anyway, I still asked him to say it. Who is he? His answer, you already know who he is. I didn't say anything, just listened. He went on. He didn't ask for contact, didn't ask for interference, just a visit, a glance in the mirror. No names, no cameras, just energy. Then he said something I will never forget. He likes to observe before they know who they are. I sat there, stunned before they realize who they are. I asked him directly, you're talking about minors, right? He laughed, not in a joking way, like it was a silly question. The issue isn't age, it's silence. The best things are the quiet ones. They don't ask questions, they just want to be seen. I hung up, not in anger, not in tears, just clarity. That's when the implicit moment became text. The mask had been removed. No more PR stunts. No more suggestions wrapped in advisory language. The goal isn't to uplift the girls, it's to observe them while they're still reaching. The next morning, my assistant discovered something stuck under my windshield wiper, a white envelope, courier font, one word, inventory. Inside was a piece of paper listing names. Some I knew, some I didn't. All the girls in my program, next to each name, typed in red in progress. Ready, muted. No notes, no signatures, no explanations. But I understood exactly what I was seeing. This wasn't a guest list, but a readiness report. Someone was watching them already, and I had let them in. I closed the whole camp down. That afternoon, there was no warning, no final performance, no graduation ceremony. I refunded the remaining budget and told the staff that the movement wouldn't be coming back the following summer because I knew if I kept it open for another week, I wouldn't be able to protect everyone. I didn't post about shutting down the camp, no goodbyes, no announcements. I didn't want it to just be a moment. I wanted it to disappear. But in this business, silence makes noise. Within a week after the movement closed, my phone started ringing, but it wasn't about opportunities. First was the perfume campaign I had been working on for over a year. Done. The call rang softly. The launch was postponed due to scheduling conflicts, except I didn't have any of those either. Then there was a talk show that I had confirmed would be canceled. No rescheduling, no explanations. And then a deal came through that got me really excited. A collaborative project designing dancewear for teens, inspired by the girls from my camp who had just disappeared. The paperwork was pulled, emails went unanswered. There were no official reasons. It wasn't a punishment. I realized it was a subtraction, a quiet removal, no drama, just less. The next blow came from someone closer, my choreographer, who had been with me since Living Color. He stopped calling, stopped showing up. No fights, no arguments. He just faded away. A few months later, someone told me he had signed an NDA with a brand affiliated with Combs. That was the last time his name appeared on my contract. Then came the envelope. It was sitting on the piano bench in my home studio. My assistant swore no one had delivered it. No name, no seal, just a folded blank sheet of paper. But when I held it up to the light, I could see faint impressions as if someone had written on it, then erased the words. There was one standout line you don't have to shout. I didn't report that. I didn't bring this issue to my team. I wasn't scared. I was disappointed. Disappointed because everything was so predictable. In my journal that week, I wrote that I wouldn't mention his name. I didn't disclose the story. I didn't meet with the press, and somehow they still heard me. 17 years after I closed the movement, I opened an email I didn't know existed. I didn't meet with the press, and somehow they still heard me. 17 years after I closed the movement, I opened an email I didn't know existed. It had been buried in an old inbox, a junk folder from a contact account I hadn't touched in years. Support filtered and forgotten. No star, no warning. The subject line just said 5 words: you did the right thing. July 21st, 2005, 2:07 a.m. No sender's name, no signature. I slowly opened it as if it still hurt. Here's what it said. Maybe you don't remember me. I worked on the final piece of the funding proposal. Not directly beneath him, but close enough to know how it worked. I wasn't allowed to see the list, but I did look. After you closed the camp, I got moved to another project. Different name, different city, but the goal was the same. The 3 girls from your program still got invites. One said yes, one said no, one never responded. The one who said yes, she wouldn't be dancing anymore. I must have stared at that screen for 5 minutes, not blinking, not crying, just silence echoing louder than anything I had heard in years. That was the first and only time I cried over this show. Not because I felt guilty, but because I finally understood. I didn't stop it. I just made it harder for them to reach through me. That's all I did. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and we tracked down the metadata. The address no longer exists, linked to a consultant for Combs Enterprises, a name that later appeared in Exhibit 22D of the Cassie case. That consultant is gone now. No presence on social media, no business listings, no trace in the industry directory since 2009. In the margins of the statement, I added a handwritten note just for the court. I thought saying no was enough. I thought closing it down would lock it away. I forgot how many other ways they could get in. I had no intention of testifying, no legal pressure, no subpoenas, no phone calls from the victim's attorney. The issue here isn't being pulled into someone else's pain. This is when I finally stepped out of my own silence. I wrote my statement by hand, 6 pages, unedited, no lawyer supervising. I personally brought it to my lawyer's office, folded in a brown envelope labeled 2005 denial package. Inside, I documented everything: the proposal, the original funding from Combs Enterprises, the anonymous email from July 2005, a printed list of the girls involved in the movement that I believe were approached after the camp ended, and a letter I wrote that summer but never sent. This letter is addressed to anyone who cares. Please respond with your intentions. Unread. That letter was buried for many years, unopened and unsigned. I didn't think anyone would need it, but it turns out the court did. They recorded my file as evidence 54A4, stored according to the sample records, with a witness near the event pipeline. I didn't even know what that meant. I know that my silence no longer protects anyone, not even me. My official statement, I know that my silence no longer protects anyone, not even me. My official statement ends like this: I did not attend any ceremonies upstairs. I was not invited to Malibu. I did not witness what the other women went through. But I was asked to be a doorway, not to seize power, not to gain fame, but to win the girls who trusted me, the girls who thought I was the last stop before success, the girls who didn't know I was being asked to step aside. Then I paused, took a breath, and wrote the final words without hesitation. I did not stop them, but I did not help them either. And now, I want to remain silent.